Dear student, I am discussing today about the part 2 of the chapter 5, agriculture and type of the agriculture. Already I have discussed about the agriculture and the factors who are affecting to the agricultural farming. Now today I am discussing about the type of agriculture. Here is also type of agriculture. To type of agriculture on the base of size and the amount of labor. On the base of size and the amount of labor, there are two types of the agriculture. First is the intensive agricultural farming. What is the meaning of intensive? Intensive means which types of the farming practices on the small areas or the field where high population or the densely population also living there. So that area has also practiced and use of the agricultural field continuous for a long period of time. So these types of the agriculture known as the intensive agricultural farming. These types of the farming has used abundant labor used for the cultivation and farming practices and growing of the crops. So in India has a populous countries in the world, China, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Asian countries. These countries has practices intensive agriculture farming. Next is the extensive agriculture farming. Extensive means Vistrit Krishi. That means these types of the farming mainly used are the practices in the low population countries, low populated countries, that means sparsely populated areas. For the example, in the Russia, Britain, Canada, Germany, France, in European countries and American countries, where has also living very less population or the sparsely population, that area has a big farm for the cultivation. Therefore, use of the machinery parts for the agricultural farming. Therefore, it is also known as the extensive agricultural farming. Next is the on the purpose of farming, on the purpose of farming, on the purpose of gain to the high money and survive of life for a lot peoples, that types of the farming under the studied under the purpose. So on the purpose of farming, there are mainly two types of the farming: subsistence agricultural farming and the commercial agricultural farming. Subsistence agricultural farming means which types of the farming practices in the high populous areas only for the purpose of survive of life and the livelihood. So these types of the farming known as the subsistence farming. Under this subsistence farming, already we have also discussed about the intensive agricultural farming, and these types of the farming on the base of or the type of the subsistence farming. There are three types of the subsistence farming: intensive, shifting, and the nomadic hoarding. Intensive agricultural farming practices in the plain regions areas where has also living high population or the very dense population, a large population also living there. Therefore, a small areas or a agricultural farm divided among the peoples or the family members. Therefore, a small parts of the agricultural farm found in the densely populated areas. Therefore, practices and use of the manual labors for this farming, it is also known as the extensive agricultural farming. But area where also found a large area coverage by the forest or the jungles, that area is covered by the canopies of the trees and the plants. That area has also used for the purpose of farming. Then some tribal societies or the people's use of these farming for this purpose of farming, use of the different types of the methods for the slash and the burn methods used for these types of the cultivation. So slash and the burn, that means cutting down of the trees and the burning root of the trees for the purpose of preparations of the humus and the ashes who mixed in the soil and fertility for the purpose of increase of the fertility of the soil. So one area has also cleared by of the trees and prepared a land for the purpose of cultivation, but 1 or 2 years after the using or the cultivation of the land and cropping growing of the crops, then continuous use 1 years and the 2 years after the using that lands convert into the barren lands or the decrease of the fertility of the soil. Then those peoples who living there are the practices for these types of the cultivation and after the decreasing of the fertility of the soil, then that lands left and search for the other land for purpose of the cultivation, and another area has also cleared of the trees and cutting downs and the burns of the trees and prepared a new patch for the cultivation. So these types of the cultivation of the land from the one to another area shifted by these tribal peoples. Those types of the system of the farming known as the shifting agricultural farming. These types of the agricultural farming mainly used and seen in the forest areas or the semi-arid zone. In the world, these types of the farming given different types of the name of the slash and the board agricultural farming. In our country, it is also known as the zooming agricultural farming. Zooming. But in the Japan, it is also known as the zoom agriculture. Northeast Asia, in the Northeast Asia, it is also called the zooming agricultural farming. In the Africa, it is also known as the Sweden and Kangin in the Philippines, Milpa in the Central America and Mexico, and Conuco in the Venezuela, Roca in Brazil, Masol in the Central America, Africa, Ladang in the Indonesia, Ray in Vietnam, Dahia in Madhya Pradesh, India, Kumari in the Western Ghats in Indian subcontinent, and Khil in the Himalayan belt. So we can also see these types of the area or the types of the agricultural farming on the world map. Suppose that it is also a rough sketch of the world map. Suppose that these types of the areas cover, and it is also known as the North American belt. But this area under the South America, it is also Falkland, a Great Lakes here, and it is also known as the Baffin Land. Here Greenland also located here. Then a Baltic Sea found here. Then the Mediterranean Sea, Black Sea, a South America. Here is also found the Red Sea, here Malagasy or the Madagascar, it is also known as the any Saudi Arabian country, of the Asia. It is also, here is also located the Indian subcontinent, India. Then a parts of the India here, and Myanmar, Bangladesh located here. Then here Japan, Korea, here is Japan, Korean belt, and these types of the so many islands group. Sri Lanka, here Sumatra, Java, Borneo, a islands group here also found, and Australia, Tasmania, New Zealand. These types of the so many islands also seen here, and here is also Caspian Sea, Aral Sea, and it is also divided by the Ural Mountains and separate to Europe from the Asia. Here is Europe, here is Asia, Africa, Australia, India, Indonesia, these islands, Indonesia, and here is North America, South America, here Canada, here Mexico, USA, Canada, here is a big country, Brazil. So these types of the so many countries, here is also Greenland, and here Finland, here Pacific Oceans, Indian Oceans, and it is also known as the S structure of the Atlantic Oceans. Atlantic Oceans. Here is also Pacific Oceans, Northern Oceans, and Southern Oceans, and Antarctica Islands. These types of the figure of the world. In this figure, Jhum agricultural farming in the Northeast Asia. This area is the Northeast Asia, a area of the Northeast Asia of the world map. On the world map, these areas cover Northeast Asia. It is also known as the Jhum. Jhum agricultural farming. Jhum. But in the Africa, it is also known as the Sweden. Swiden. Sweden. Next, Kangen in the Philippines. Where is also Philippines? Philippines, here also found here, Philippines Islands. Here in this country, it is also known as the Kangin slash and board agricultural methods of the farming. Caingin, Kangin. And Milpa in the Central America and Mexico. Central America means USA and Mexico. In this area, it is also known as the Milpa, M-I-L-P-A, Milpa. And slash and burn methods of the agricultural farming known as the Conuco in the Venezuela. Where is also found Venezuela? Venezuela is also located in the South America, but here it is also known as the Conuco. These types of the name of the Jhumi agricultural also practices in these areas by the tribal societies. And in the Brazil, this area is the Brazil, parts of the South America. It is also known as the Roca. Here is also known as the Roca, R-O-C-A. Next, Central Africa. In these areas, in the Central Africa, it has also known as the Masole. Masole, M-A-S-O-L-E, Masole. And in the Indonesia, it is also known as the Indonesia. Here it is also known as the Ladang, L-A-D-A-N-G, Ladang. And Vietnam, here is also found the Asian countries, Vietnam, located here near the Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, in these areas, in the China and Korean areas, here is also found the Vietnam. In this area, it is also known as the Ray. And the Madhya Pradesh region of the India, in this center, it is also known as the Dahiya. This area is also known as the Dahiya, and the Western Ghats. Here it is also known as under the Western Ghats. That means under the Western Ghat, Kerala, Karnataka, Goa, and the parts of the Maharashtra and the Gujarat. This area has also known as the Western Ghat areas, but it has also known as the Kumari, K-U-M-A-R-I, Kumari, any nomadic hoarding and a shifting agricultural farming practices in this area, but it is also known as the Kumari. But a Himalayan belt in this area is known as the Himalayan belt, but under this area, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and parts of the Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Haryana, and the UP, Bihar. In this region, it is also known as the Khil, K-H-I-L, Khil. So, these are the so many names given of the shifting agricultural farming in the world. Now, we will also discuss about the nomadic hoarding. What is the meaning of nomadic hoarding? Mainly, these types of the agricultural farming practices in the arid and the semi-arid zone of the world. But nomadic hoarding means where found a not favorable situation of the climate for the living and survive of life. That area has very short and very small areas and cannot be easily possible of the agricultural farming. So that area has which types of the hoarding. That means creatures who picked by the peoples, then that area has left and migrate from that area and search for the other land for the pasture, for the creatures or the herding. So these types of the practice and rearing hoarding farming, that is also known as the nomadic hoarding farming in the world. But is this types of the field mainly found in the Arabian countries, western parts of the Asian countries, and the Thar desert or the Rajasthan parts, Gujarat areas and parts of the Maharashtra in India, and Arizona desert areas in the North America, and Peru areas of the South America, African countries. So many countries also has seen the nomadic hoarding farming. Next is the commercial agricultural farming. Commercial agricultural farming means which types of the cultivation practices are the create due to the only for purpose of the selling and gain to the foreign currencies. So, which types of the agricultural farming practices only for the view of the commercial or the commercial views, that is also known as the commercial agricultural farming. These types of the agricultural farming divided into 6 categories. First is the extensive grain farming. We know extensive grain farming mainly practices on those areas where found a large area for the cultivation under the agricultural farming, but peoples also living there very less or sparsely populated. So mainly use of the machine for this purpose of the grain farming. In this under this grain farming produce the wheat, sugar cane, and beverage crops, fiber crops for the purpose of the agro-based industries development. So these types of the agricultural farming known as the extensive grain farming. Next is the mixed farming. Mixed means a area where also practices for the cultivation of the food grains and for the purpose of the rearing hoarding. That means food for the creatures. So these types of the farming, that means food grains and the grains for the purpose of the rearing farming. So these types of the mixed farming known as the mixed farming agricultural in the world. And the plantation farming, under the plantation farming, any which types of the plant planted in the one seasons or the one time, and productions produced or the obtained for a long period of time again and again. So these types of the farming known as the plantation farming. For the under the plantation farming, we will also discuss in the detailed studies about the special food grains. But under this plantation farming, cocoa, tea, coffee, sugar cane, and bananas, fruitial plants, etc. is planted under the plantation farming. And dairy farming, we know which types of the farming only for the purpose of the rearing farming or the rearing cultivations and practices for the food for the fodders, that is also known as the dairy farming. Under this farming, mainly use of the pet animal in the lot areas are also paid by these peoples for the purpose of exporting of the products who obtain from the milk. So, a mammal also for the purpose of the any, that means areas who cultivate it for the purpose of the pasture lands and charaga, grasslands, etc. And the horticultures, what is the horticultures? That means when the agricultural farming near the town used for the purpose of the flowering and the fruitial plants only for the purpose of the commercial use or the exporting and gain to the foreign currencies or the currencies from the other areas. So, these types of the farming known as the horticulture. And market grass and gardening. Market gardening means near the market, which types of the agricultural farm uses only for the purpose of the vegetables, cultivations or the productions. That area is also known as the market grand or the market gardening. So, these types are the so many types of the farming given in your book in this chapter. So, we will also and you will also discuss about this farming according to the with the help of books. Now, today, thank you to all.